as soon as you're ready.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. That's very good.
My name is Benjamin. I prefer my pronouns he, him. And I'll be accepting my POI verbally at the end of my speech. Thank you. I'll be starting my speech with rebuttals in 3, 2, 1. The first Gulf speaker said that they barely know each other and they couldn't recognize her. But they had more than enough time to know each other as they danced together for approximately 4 hours and 10 minutes. And the Gulf speaker also said that he only liked her for her looks, but he proved that he actually loved her by searching the whole village for her. And next, the first Gulf speaker said that it was a bad idea to marry the prince, but the prince has no incentive to hurt her. And lastly, the first Gulf speaker also said that she wouldn't suffer anymore even if she rejected the prince. Yes, but even so, she needs the love and care that she's missing. I'll be moving on to my argument. I will moving on to the burden of proof. Our side will be proving why Cinderella should marry the prince and it will make her life better. Starting with my first argument. If Cinderella didn't marry the prince, she would continue to live in a horrible life. She was mentally and physically abused, witnessed by her stepsisters ripping her dress and ripping out her necklace, forcing her to wash the dishes, do the laundry every single day. And her stepmother had never let Cinderella have a chance to live a life, restricting her to being a maid and soon becoming a servant of the whole family. If she's married to the prince, she can escape the insanity of her stepmother and stepsisters. My second argument is the prince has longed the presence of Cinderella. The prince fell in love with Cinderella after dancing with her in the ball. Study found that it only takes 3 seconds to find someone attractive. And he has proved his dedication and love to her by searching the whole village with the glass slipper. As the movie presented, a lot of wealthy, stunning girls have long wished to actually be with the prince, but instead of going with them, he only searched for Cinderella with a ridiculously small slipper. It would have taken a long time to find Cinderella since he was searching the whole village, and the prince hardly found Cinderella if the mice haven't told her. If the prince didn't find Cinderella, he most likely would have never found her and got set up to marry a woman his father assigned. And he would never find his happily ever after because the woman only wanted to marry the prince because of his money in the first place. My last argument is, it doesn't matter if they will fall out of love or not. Cinderella has no one else to go to. She already suffered long enough. Unlikely, the Cinderella is a princess. She's really famous. People always find ways to find out about their private life. And if people find out the prince abused the princess, they'll start attacking him. They'll not listen to what he says when he becomes the king. The prince would not want to harm the princess as he wants to keep up his image. That's the end of my speech. I'll be accepting my POI. If there's no POI, then I'm going to end my speech here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Speaker of the Opposition. Give me a second to write my notes. Right. Okay. May I now invite the second speaker of the government team to provide their substantive speech. You may begin as soon as you're ready.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. So, as the second speaker of side government, I'll be starting my speech with some rebuttals and some further elaborations on the arguments PM stated, then move on to my own arguments. I prefer verbal POIs and my pronouns I go by are she, her. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, before I begin, I would like to make a few rebuttals on what LO said. LO stated that Cinderella was abused by her stepfamily, but I can assure you that even if Cinderella didn't marry the prince, she would no longer have to suffer the turmoil of her stepfamily. Why? Because the prince now knows Cinderella's identity. He knows who she is, where she lives, and who she lives under. One bad word about her stepfamily from Cinderella to the prince, and they'd be immediately stripped of their rights, probably executed, like PM stated earlier. So and I will now move on to my arguments. I will now elaborate a bit for PM. PM mentioned earlier that even if she did marry into royalty, she wasn't born one. It probably doesn't occur to people that only pure-blooded royals or high-ranking people get truly accepted as royalty within the royal palace, not just by the common people, whereas Cinderella is neither. All she has is worn out clothes, a few rats to keep her company, and not a cent to her name. She has done rough work. Her knowledge on how to do these things will cause her to be laughed at and degraded by the jealous women who have the potential and ability to overthrow her position. Marrying royalty sounds like the better choice in seemingly any situation, but that only applies to those who were already close to it. Marrying royalty to them is just like climbing the ranks. If they fall, the square one is what winning the game is to the poorer, average people. Cinderella may have been born to a wealthy father, but that father is dead now, and the money he left is in the hands of his second wife, who isn't especially fond of Cinderella, and definitely will not loan her any money or give her a title. This makes Cinderella have the rights as any normal servant in the Lord's home. If she marries into a family, it will reflect badly on the prince. Now, my first argument is that even if she agreed to marry the prince, she would not be able to hide from him if he was abusive. He's the prince. He isn't just anybody. His orders are absolute. If the witnesses of this mistreatment were told to be quiet about it, they would have to listen and obey. Their lives and family will be put at stake, and nobody will be willing to sacrifice those things out of empathy for a woman with a violent or bad husband, especially if the abusive husband was the prince. If the prince was abusive towards Cinderella, she would also have no family name to fall back onto, to complain to, or to plead for divorce. Cinderella is a romantic. She's psychologically weak, if not physically as well. She believes things easily, especially when it comes from someone she loves, despite whether or not they're right. If the prince is in fact an abusive man, there's no doubt that he will still try to convince Cinderella that he is doing it out of love or out of care. Therefore, gaslighting Cinderella is incredibly easy. Even her stepmother successfully convinced her that she had to do servant work, and that it was fine, that she was treated worse than one. My second argument is that the choice to get married wasn't made until after Cinderella was found. It wasn't a preconceived decision, nor was it a thought out one. It was an arbitrary decision. The condition of their marriage would be very unstable. Love with no time to grow into a strong bond is not a real connection between two so-called lovers. Once that connection is severed, either by gradual loss or spontaneously or infatuation, Cinderella will be the one to receive the bigger blow. Without the prince in the picture, she would never grown to be dependent on him. So when the time comes where the prince decides to leave Cinderella behind, she will have absolutely nothing. Just her charms and ability to make people pity her won't last long, especially since youth is one of her most important traits. My third and final argument is that divorce has off limits. If Cinderella realizes that the marriage was a bad idea, she will not be able to divorce him for a better situation. By marrying the prince, she would become fully dependent on him. She would leave her family history behind and have nothing outside her life as a princess. She's basically agreeing to spend the rest of her life with the prince. Divorcing is impossible when the person you're leaving is the reason why you have clean water to drink or bath with. Since this is a patriarchal society, it should be assumed that Cinderella will have to bear a child, better yet to them, a son. What will happen to the child after she left? Would the child carry on the legacy of having horrible step-parents if the prince chose to remarry? It could even be said that Cinderella was an unfaithful wife and decided to leave her besotted prince alone and confused. Cinderella was a nobody before marrying the prince. Nobody knew her at all. She was locked in her attic by the stepmother. Marrying him would be like living because of him, for him and him only. She should avoid all of this by not marrying him in the first place. With that, I probably end my speech. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, may we now have the second speaker of the opposition team provide their substantive speech. You may begin when you are ready.
Thank you. I prefer my POS verbally in any part of my speech. Sorry if you hear some dog barks. I prefer my my gender pronouns are he or his or him or like anything like that. And so I'll start off my speech with some, I'll just start off my speech in 3, 2, 1. As we have seen in the movie of Cinderella or just the books of it, we have realized and seen how unfair the stepmother and step sibling have treated Cinderella. First, they took her father's wealth, immense wealth, and made her a servant. She was forced to do all the dirty work in the household, and she didn't have any life to actually enjoy. She had to do whatever their siblings and her step sibling and stepmother told her to do, and that is no life to live as a 16-year-old girl. And so if she stays in the family, she will be treated no different. And so I'll start off with some statements made by Guff, and I'm going to rebut them. So first, Guff stated that even if she did marry the prince, she won't suffer. And by rebutting that, the prince may hate Cinderella for rejecting her. He either would make her life shitty and make her not and ruin her life because she fell in love with her, and maybe she is the bad person that side government portrays him to be, and he may try to ruin Cinderella's life. He may try to do everything in his power to not give her an occupation and make her stay in the household that she once was. Or either way, in both sides, Cinderella will not get abused. It's better on our side because she'll get loved by she'll get loved by the prince as she has always craved, and the freedom that she has always craved as well, because she will actually be able to do what she wants as she has a very high placing in the royal family as the wife of the prince, which might one day become the queen. And so people won't actually try to abuse her because she has the immense amount of power to actually throw anyone down. Even if the prince is abusive, as side government says he might be, the princess can easily ruin his life and his royalty. All she needs to do is go out and speak a word of the abuse made by the prince, and the rumor will spread like wildfire, and justice will be taken into the hands of the villagers. Those villagers won't be happy that in the future they will be led by an abusive king that doesn't care about his wife, and so they would think, what will the prince do as he is king to the rest of the village? And they won't dare to leave it aside and not care about it. And so Guff later stated that she will not be accepted into royalty, but she can learn how to be a princess, even though she has not actually been in any sort of wealth, any sort of a good life. When after her father died, she still has that small amount of wealth that her father left to the stepmothers, and so she knows how her step siblings have behaved, and she knows that they are, and so she knows that she shouldn't be like that, and so she would actually have a very high place, as I have said, in royalty, and she will get an immense amount of power to overthrow anyone. And so after that, I'm going to explain why married royalty isn't a bad idea, and it shouldn't only be, and it's not only supposed to be for the people that are close to royalty to marry the prince. And so, as we have all seen, there's nothing worse than living as a servant in the house of some cruel mother and siblings. She deserves the right to actually go and marry the prince. And so it would be a much better choice overall than to go back to her household. And so after she marries the prince, she'll actually have the right to do whatever she wants. She'll have the wealth to actually buy the things that she has never had. She'll be able to enjoy her life like she has never before. She'll have a lot of power and have a choice to actually help the village and help those people that are not as lucky as her that were able to marry the prince. She might try to help those that are also have abusive parents, and might try to make the village a better place as she has once been as the person that was abused. And so divorce isn't also off limits, and we're gonna state why now. As she has fame, she'll be able to find a job even if she divorces. Her life doesn't depend on the prince, even if she marries the prince. She'll have a lot of fame as the public knows that how bad the prince has treated her, and people will take her into their hands as some sort of sympathy. And so these people will also need in their business eyes, these people will need to help their business. As both by hiring her, people know that this business hired a person that was once the princess, and so they will go and check it out and purchase quite a lot of things. And so she will actually have the chance to find a very good job, a high paying job that will help the business out a lot. And so after she has divorced, she will not be in any sort of danger because she will have the fame and people would listen to her. People would actually believe her. And so I'll continue on to some arguments. So as we have said, we need to prove why Cinderella should marry the prince and why it will make her life better. And so as I've said, Cinderella did have a horrible life. And the prince has long the presence of Cinderella by trying to search the whole village for her with just one glass slipper that would have fitted in anyone's leg. When he searched for weeks and weeks and didn't have something, at last, when he found Cinderella, they married. And so, and so I end my speech here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Opposition second. Government third speaker, you may begin when you're ready.
Give me a bit.
Okay.
I'm the third speaker of government, the government whip, and I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So Cinderella would have freedom without marrying the prince as well. She would, since the prince knows who she is, this is basically like a restatement of what my first 2 speakers have already said. The prince would know who she is, and he would be able to like provide her with a guard or something, because he would know that her step family isn't like particularly a nice family, and he would be able to protect her because he knows who he is now. Our house has provided reasonings as to why marrying a stranger isn't a good decision. Let's say the prince is a person with regard to consent. If Cinderella rejected his proposal for marriage, he wouldn't force her. And if he truly loved her, he would wait and keep trying until she accepted. We believe that in contrast to side opposition, Cinderella choosing not to marry the prince, who is an essential stranger, and plunge herself into a world of impossible debt is justified. Side opposition has said before that the people would turn against an abusive king, but we would like to say that we would like to ask, would the people believe the words of the prince that they have loved for the past few decades, or a woman who came out of nowhere? Besides, abusing Cinderella obviously wouldn't be a public thing on the prince's side. The prince isn't stupid. He knew how to find Cinderella, even if he only had her shoe. So he would also know that abusing someone isn't right, and he would do it in private instead. A lot of opposition's rebuttals have been proven wrong by our previous statements. that say the prince would shield Cinderella from harm, whether or not they're married. But we also believe that from Cinderella's point of view, since she had only known the prince for a few hours beforehand, it's highly unlikely that she doesn't know the true person he is. If they had spent some more time together to get to know one another better, this foundation of a relationship would be much more stable. But instead, this process was completely eliminated and crammed into a few short, fleeting hours. The base of their desire to create a future together stemmed from barely half a day. How is that enough time to decide whether or not you wish to marry someone? Our house believes that the decision to marry the prince is a reckless one on Cinderella's side. Side opposition has claimed a few times in their debate that her life wouldn't depend on the prince, but we would like to say that it would, because she's practically a nobody marrying the prince. The power imbalance between them when they get married would be very big. And so one way or another, Cinderella would have to depend on him. We also provide a different perspective, one that's less detached from reality. During the Prime Minister's speech, our house has stated that on Cinderella's side, she was swayed because the prince is a suitor of the highest status. Of course, she would fall in love at first sight. For the prince, her looks were the sole purpose he even approached her in the first place. He came for appearance and then was allured by her personality that isn't actually hers. Trying to impress someone inevitably changes the way you carry yourself. Our house is saying that the prince may like Cinderella for her personality, but is it the same for Cinderella? Cinderella is a girl who's mistreated on the daily. The her she shows the prince may very well be a whole other person. It's completely valid to assume that she altered her personality, even if unconsciously, to impress the prince and not show him how weak she thinks she is. I would like to restate that when they get married, grow old, and see each other's true selves, they will come to realize from years of experience and time to mature that their spontaneous marriage was a bad idea. Side opposition said that she had a horrible life, and the prince longed for the presence of Cinderella, but the ball was held in the first place to find a good wife for the prince. So his desperation to find one probably clouded his decision making and totally fell in love with her, quote unquote. On the other hand, our house believes that puppy love doesn't last forever. The prince might regret her decision to marry Cinderella, and Cinderella would have to live with the knowledge that her love for her husband is unrequited, or that he is in love with a version of Cinderella that has long died along with her youth. That's the end of my speech. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will now proceed with the third speaker of the opposition team. You may begin when you are ready.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'd like to start off my speech with some rebuttals. So they stated that even if Cinderella rejected the prince, she would have freedom without marrying the prince. And it doesn't matter, because on both sides, Cinderella will stop getting abused. But on our side, Cinderella will get the love that she craved. When she was small, she never gotten love ever since her father passed away. So she just craves love, and the prince will provide her with that. And there is no point, like they say, like maybe the prince will like provide a guard to her, but there's like no point in being protected, because the mother would already like probably be afraid of abusing her, but she'll still be lonely. If she doesn't marry the prince, she'll have nowhere else to go to. Literally, she has no friends, and those villagers, those maybe like those girls, they probably don't want to be her friend anyways, because they are jealous of her. Therefore, she has no one else to go to. She will just be lonely if she doesn't marry the prince, and she will like she won't get like the love she craved for. Also, they stated if the Cinderella really accuses the prince of abusing her, the citizens probably would not believe her, because they already known the prince for such a long time. And this is untrue because in most situations, people will most likely believe the victims. Even if the people do not believe Cinderella, they will still become skeptical of the prince, and they will like try to observe his actions and stuff like that, and therefore the prince will become scared and worry, and he will be afraid to hurt her again. So the people will probably believe her. Also, um they stated that the prince only likes the looks of Cinderella, and this is untrue because if he actually only likes likes the look of Cinderella, he would not waste all his time just to search the whole village and just to find Cinderella. This proves his dedication for her and that he truly loves her. And they also stated that she only wants to impress the prince, like she's subconsciously alternating her personality, and it does not matter because she's just desperate for love, and that is true, and that is okay because everyone wants love. She did not get any love when she was small, when she was like in the past, so it is okay if she wants love now, and it's okay if she uses the prince to get this love because in like in the they also say like you will regret in the future if they marry each other, but this is untrue because the whole point, the most important part is that you did truly love each other. Even if you fall out of love in the future, it does not matter because that is a normal thing most couples go through when they get old and married. Some couples, even if they know each other for a really really long time and they really understand each other, in the end they will still fall, most couples still fall out of love, and that is the process of life. It is totally normal and there is nothing wrong with it. So as long as you love each other at first and she got the love that she actually craved, that is the most important part. Also, they say that the prince was also desperate because the whole point of the ball was to find a prince, was to find someone that she could marry, and he had so many other choices. So why would he choose Cinderella? Obviously Cinderella caught his attention and like she's like different from the others. So obviously if he would search the whole village just to find her, he also probably would not just do it to manipulate her and use her. And we already explained that he has no incentive to do so because he'll want to keep up with his reputation. Like nowadays it's really easy for people to like find out about your dirty secrets and what you do, no matter how private you try to be. And even if no one believes Cinderella, people will still become skeptical of her of him, as I've already said. Therefore, he will be afraid to hurt her. Okay, now I want to state like the clashes. So, in which side Cinderella will be more happy in? In both sides, she will not get abused anymore. But on our side, it's better because she will get like all the love that she craved for, and he will provide her with that happiness, even if it will die out later. That is not the point. It is better because in government side, she did not get any love. She'll just be lonely forever. But on our side, at least she got love from the beginning. That will at least like make it a little more worth it. And therefore on our side she will be happier in, because just because you don't get abused anymore does not mean that you will you will still be like you will still be happy, because you just become lonely and you will have no one to go to. And also government like they stated like she will not get accepted into royalty, but that's actually it doesn't matter because she can like always learn how to like be a proper princess, and like the prince will also provide her with a lot of like like those dresses and stuff, because they said that she doesn't have any dresses and stuff. So that's therefore we think that it is better if she can get that love that she crave for on our side, even if it dies out. So she should marry the prince. That's the end of my speech. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will now proceed with the opposition team's reply speech. You may begin when you are ready.
Okay, thanks. So start my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. I'll start my speech by stating the clashes and explain why as side opposition we should win. So first, the biggest clash of this debate is that as they had only went to the ball together, was that enough to actually know each other and fall in love? And so as side opposition, we have clearly explained that it only takes 3 minutes to actually know someone. And since they have danced in the ball for together for 4 hours and 10 minutes, as it has said in the story, they have more than enough time to actually know each other. As we have explained, they wouldn't just dance in the ball and not have small talk. They won't just dance in the ball and not even say a single word to each other. With 4 hours and 10 minutes, they have more than enough time to actually have small talk and know more about each other. The prince could have asked her a lot of questions and know more about her life. He might have only fell in love with her just because he has sympathy for her, and so because he has heard that she has been abused most of her life by her stepmothers and step siblings that were also in the ball there, and said that she wasn't able to go to a ball without actually sneaking out herself. And so maybe the prince has sympathy for her and actually took her and only fell in love because he had sympathy. And so he knows that much about Cinderella, and of course everyone knows about the prince. As the prince is in part of loyalty, as we have explained, his life won't be very private. People know everything he does, and everything he does will affect the village and the kingdom overall very immensely. And so that's why we should win this clash. And side government doesn't explain why they won't be able to actually fall in love. And so we think we win this clash. So the second clash is that will she be better off with marrying the prince? Wait, I forgot to summon him. Okay. Marrying the prince, or continue with her life with her step siblings and stepmother. And so we say either way she might get abused as she goes back to her normal household with her stepmother and step sibling. She will be treated as a mere servant and be treated terribly, as they know that she has shot her chance with the prince. They would know that the prince actually likes her, and the step siblings might be jealous. They might treat her even worse than they might even treat her worse than before, and that would be very bad. And so we think that either way, even if she does get abused in royalty, she would at least have a better life if she actually marries the prince. And even if she marries the prince, it doesn't guarantee that the prince will even abuse her. As we have said, the prince will not have searched the whole village for a lot of weeks just to have a wife to abuse. And so this is very unlikely and very unjust. And so, as we have explained, that all side government has explained is that the prince might actually abuse Cinderella, but they don't explain why he would do that and why she shouldn't marry him. And so we think we win this clash again. And so the third clash that we have been able to identify is that if she rejects the prince, will she live a good life or not? And so we say that she won't, because people know her in the public as the girl that thought. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. And my speech.
Time is up. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay. I would now like the government reply to proceed with their speech. You may begin when you are ready.
Okay, give me a second.
Okay.
Okay. So as a reply speaker of side government, I would like to state that throughout this debate, opposition has constantly striven to prove the prince likes more than just her face, but actually the prince approached her because she was pretty. The argument opposition has given more so try to prove that Cinderella will get love from the marriage, but sometimes just love isn't enough. The love that stemmed from little time would be unstable and would die out eventually as well. With a relationship stated on such a shaky ground, marital problems are bound to happen. It's safe to say side government has a more realistic approach, as love at first sight is something that is more likely to occur in fairy tales rather in real life. As stated in the first point of government, they are practically strangers. Knowing each other for 4 hours isn't enough. And we side government also proves that Cinderella is better off without marrying the prince. We strongly believe that Cinderella will no longer have to live in torment under the prince's surveillance. What we are implying is that even if the prince might not want her in a solely romantic way, it is clear that he wants her, even if his intentions are to hurt her. If his intention isn't going to be good, in Cinderella's good graces, he does not want others to hurt her as well, unless he is the one doing it. Even if the prince likes Cinderella, it isn't necessary for her to like him back. So she has the choice to not live with him or marry him. Yes, the love dying is important because marrying the prince is literally like throwing her present life away to be with him. And our side, our house has provided our house has provided reasoning in favor of everyone, the prince, the people, and Cinderella herself. Like we said that they are practically strangers and they've known each other for barely a day. They couldn't have courted each other. All the prince knows about Cinderella is her foot size. Abusing someone and also abusing someone doesn't really need to be justified by reason. So yeah, that's the end of my speech. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the end of the debate. I'd like all the debaters and mostly the audience, a lot of people here, to return to the main room. You can do that by clicking the break